All right, time to look at this indictment in United States v. Carvajal-Barrios. As I said in the previous segment or in this in a previous video, depending on whether you're watching the podcast or you're consuming my individual videos on this topic of Maduro. This case was originally brought in 2011 against a single individual. Then in March 2020, superseding indictment brought in several others. And then now it's been updating. This is superseding indictment number 4, S4, right here, dropped or unsealed on January 3rd, 2026, in conjunction with the capture of Maduro. I don't know why I just made the whole indictment do a 360. It's for fun. Okay, let me make sure the copy. All right. I want to be able to highlight this. And the one filed here, I can't do that with. So let me get the version that was put out by Bondi. There it is. Okay, so this indictment, just to go ahead and get straight to it, this indictment charges Maduro and 4 others, I believe. One, it's Rondon, Chacin, Cilia, Guerra, and Flores. I don't know why I said 4 others. It's more than 4. It's 1, 2. I miscounted as why. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So Maduro and 5 others. My mistake. Charges them with 1, narco-terrorism conspiracy, 2, cocaine importation conspiracy, 3, possession of machine guns and destructive devices, and 4, conspiracy to possess the above. Now, there are other charges that potentially could have been brought against Maduro. A number of other things. He could have been indicted militarily and given a military trial and put in Guantanamo for the type of stuff he's done. But you don't always go after someone for everything you think they've done and maybe think you can get a guilty verdict on. You go after them for what you strongly believe you can prove in court. Right? So that's what's happening here. And who knows, maybe there will be more charges. It's possible. It's possible. Do you think, I'm just going to throw this out here. I should have thrown this out in another video, but I'll do it here. Do you guys think that when Delta Force went in to nab Maduro and his wife, do you think the only things that they took with them were Maduro and his wife? Hmm? Or do you think perhaps some phones, some laptops, some other hardware might have been collected? Some other documents might have been collected? Maybe we'll find out. Okay, so this indictment's out of the Southern District of New York. There is a chance this could be moved to Florida because there are also indictments out of Florida against the Maduro regime. So it is possible another case could be brought against Maduro out of there. We'll see. All right, introduction. For over 25 years, leaders of Venezuela have abused their positions of public trust and corrupted once legitimate institutions to import tons of cocaine into the United States. Nicolás Maduro Moros, the defendant, is at the forefront of that corruption and was partnered with his co-conspirators to use his illegally obtained authority and the institutions he corroded to transport thousands of tons of cocaine to the United States. Since its early days in Venezuelan government, Maduro Moros has tarnished every public office he has held. As a member of Venezuela's National Assembly, Maduro Moros moved loads of cocaine under the protection of Venezuelan law enforcement. As Venezuela's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Maduro Moros provided Venezuelan diplomatic passports to drug traffickers and facilitated diplomatic cover for planes used by money launderers to repatriate drug proceeds from Mexico to Venezuela. As Venezuela's president and now de facto ruler, Maduro Moros allows cocaine-fueled corruption to flourish for his own benefit, for the benefit of members of his ruling regime, and for the benefit of his family members. Nicolas Maduro Moros, the defendant, now sits atop a corrupt, illegitimate government that for decades has leveraged government power to protect and promote illegal activity, including drug trafficking. That drug trafficking has enriched and entrenched Venezuela's political and military elite, including Minister of the Interior, Justice and Peace, Diosdado Cabello Rondon. The defendant and former Minister of Interior and Justice Ramon Rodriguez Chacin, or Chacin maybe, the defendant, that's another defendant here, that massive scale drug trafficking has also concentrated power and wealth in the hands of Maduro Moros' family, including his wife, the purported First Lady of Venezuela, Cilia Adela Flores de Maduro. The defendant and Maduro, Moros' son, member of Venezuela's National Assembly, Nicolás Ernesto Maduro Guerra, aka Nicolisto, aka the Prince, is also a defendant in this case. This cycle of narcotics based corruption lines the pockets of Venezuelan officials and their families while also benefiting violent narco terrorists who operate with impunity on Venezuelan soil and who help produce, protect, and transport tons of cocaine to the United States. At various times since in or about 1999, Venezuelan officials, including Nicolás Maduro Moros, Diosdado Cabello Rondon, Ramon Rodriguez Chacin, the defendants, have partnered with narco-terrorists from Fuerzas Armadas Revolucionarios de Colombia, or FARC, F-A-R-C. By the way, I'm not a Spanish speaker. I'm just doing the best I can, so feel free to have a giggle at me as I try to pronounce all these things. Ejército de Liberación Nacional, ELN, the Sinaloa Cartel, the Zetas, and Tren de Aragua, TDA, including TDA's leader Hector Rusthenford, Guerrero Flores, aka Nino Guerrero, Nino Guerrero, the defendant. In sum, Maduro Moros and his co-conspirators have for decades partnered with some of the most violent and prolific drug traffickers and narco-terrorists in the world, and relied on corrupt officials throughout the region to distribute tons of cocaine to the United States. The defendants, Nicolás Maduro Moros, the defendant, a Venezuelan citizen, was previously the president of Venezuela and is now, having remained in power despite losses in recent elections, the de facto but illegitimate ruler of the country. Maduro Moros also previously held a seat in Venezuela's National Assembly between in or about 2000 and in or about 2006, acted as the Venezuelan Minister of Foreign Affairs between in or about 2006 and in or about 2013, and acted as Vice President of Venezuela in or about 2013. Maduro Moros succeeded in the Venezuelan presidency after former President Hugo Chavez died in or about 2013, and during Maduro's own presidency, continued to participate in cocaine trafficking with drug dealers and narco-terrorist groups. In or about 2018, Maduro Moros declared victory in a disputed and internationally condemned presidential election in Venezuela. In or about 2019, Venezuela's National Assembly invoked the Venezuelan Constitution and declared that Maduro Moros had usurped power and was not the legitimate president of Venezuela. Nonetheless, Maduro Moros continued to exercise the powers of the Venezuelan presidency, causing more than 50 countries, including the United States, to refuse to recognize Maduro Moros as Venezuela's head of state. In or about 2024, Venezuela held another presidential election that was again widely criticized by the international community, in which Maduro Moros declared himself the winner despite widespread condemnation. Diosdado Cabello Rondon, the defendant, a Venezuelan citizen, is the Minister of Interior, Justice, and Peace, a member of the Venezuelan Armed Forces, and the Vice President of the ruling United Socialist Party of Venezuela. Cabello Rondon is widely recognized as one of the most powerful officials in Venezuela. Cabello Rondon previously acted as Chief of Staff to Chavez in or about 2001, Vice President of Venezuela in or about 2002, Governor of Venezuela's Miranda state between in or about 2004, and in or about 2008, and President of Venezuela's National Assembly between in or about 2012 and in or about 2016. Between 2017 and 2020, Cabello Rondon acted as a member and then president of Venezuela's National Constituent Assembly. following the illegitimate creation of the National Constituent Assembly, which siphoned the constitutional powers of Venezuela's National Assembly and further entrenched Maduro's regime. Following the dissolution of the National Constituent Assembly in or about 2020, Cabello Rondon became a member of Venezuela's National Assembly in 2021 through 2024. Hold on, I want to grab from my thread the that graphic, or maybe I can get it here. I believe it's listed here with this. See if I can show you guys a picture of what these people look like. Yes, there they are. Okay, so here is. So you already know what Maduro looks like. Of course, this poster is from when he was worth 15 million, now 50 million. Right, so here is our photos of Diosdado, Cabello, Rondon. So that's who we were just reading about. So let me see. I'll grab images of these people as we read about them, so you can kind of like you can kind of like put a face with them, right? Okay. Ramon Rodriguez Chacin. Ramon Rodriguez Chacin. He is in this chart. Is he? No, he is not. Let me see if I can look up what he looks like. There he is. He is. I do not believe he is in custody. But that's him. Okay. Chacin is a Venezuelan politician and former member of the armed services who served as the Minister of Interior and Justice between 2002 and 2008. Between in or about 2012 and 2017, Rodriguez Chacin was the governor of Venezuela's Guerrero state. Cilia Adela Flores Maduro, that is his wife, who, by the way, had some bandages on her face when she appeared in court. This is her. Yeah. I want to see I think I have a picture of her from when she was going to court. Nope, it's not that image. Let me see. That's him when he landed in New York. Does this one have a picture of his wife? Yeah, I think she might be in this one. By the way, just there's a lot of images going around of Maduro in various outfits and going to and from aircraft and out of vehicles and into buildings and whatnot. And I just want to caution you that not all of it is real. There have been a lot of AI images that have been going around, and with anything that's like high publicity and going viral, you're gonna see that stuff. You're gonna see viral images, right, and fake images. So that's just the world we live in today. So, but just be kind of careful about it. I was thinking I had one that had a better picture of his wife. What she looks like now. Is it in this? I think she's right there. See it. Anyway, that's her. I believe that was her in that first video. She was in that that I showed you. She was in that green hoodie. Not this. She's the first one to get out of the vehicle. Right there. I believe that's her right there in the jeans and in that green hoodie. Yeah, I believe that's her right there. I'm not 100% positive. By the way, okay, so on the wardrobe changes, there's been lots of wardrobe changes between the vehicles and vessels that they were in, and there are some fake AI images out there, but there's reasons why they would change their clothing. Uh, this may be one of the most high profile arrests ever made, and it may be one of the defendants who is most at risk of being assassinated. There's lots of reasons why, as they transport this guy in armored vehicles and surrounded by DEA and U.S. Marshals and whatnot, they they have very good reason to protect Maduro and his wife and make sure they're not killed, because somebody could get paid a lot of money to take them out. So one reason to change their outfit is to make it more difficult for people who would be interested in doing harm to Maduro to be able to track him from vehicle to aircraft to vehicle to building. So it just makes a lot of sense to do wardrobe changes like that, and also to signify to the people who are transporting him who has custody of him, like who's in charge of his custody and who's in charge of security or whatever. So not going to get too deep into that. I'm not an expert on it, but I'm just telling you that there's reasons why there are wardrobe changes, but to also watch out for the fake images that are out there. All right. So his wife, the defendant, is the de facto first lady of Venezuela, having married Maduro in or about 2013. Flores de Maduro, so she's Cilia Flores, has had a long-standing political career. She had acted as the president of the National Assembly starting when Maduro Moros left that role to become Minister of Foreign Affairs in 2006 and later in 2011, as the Attorney General of Venezuela between 2012 and 2013, and as a member of the National Constituent Assembly starting in or about 2017. Nicolas Ernesto Maduro Guerra, or Nicolisto, is his son, and I don't remember if that is in that chart. No. Let's look up an image of him. Okay. There's Maduro's son, Nicolasito, the prince, is the son of Nicolas Maduro and a corrupt Venezuelan politician. Maduro Guerrero entered politics after his father. Maduro Moros became the president of Venezuela about 2013. At that time, Maduro Moros appointed Maduro Guerrero the head of the Corps of Special Inspectors of the Presidency, a position which was created for Maduro Guerrero. In about 2017, Maduro Guerrero entered Venezuela's National Constituent Assembly, and in about 2021, he entered Venezuela's National Assembly, where he continues to hold office. He is not in U.S. custody. Hector Rusthenford Guerrero Flores, or Nino Guerrero, the defendant has, for over a decade, served as either the leader of Tren de Aragua or co-leader of Tren de Aragua. Let's look this guy up. Is he in that chart? No, not as many people in this chart as I would. All these look to be defendants in the other cases that were announced, or most of them are defendants in other cases that were announced that day, back in March 2020. So let's look up this guy's picture. I wish he was in U.S. custody. Is he in U.S. custody? He's the same age as me. He was arrested in 2010, escaped in 2012, recaptured in 2013. In the Tokoron prison. He escaped from there in 2023. Between 400 and 500 inmates escaped with him. And he's in a prison in Venezuela, and the Venezuelan government confirmed his escape days later. The United States has taken significant measures against him. On December 18th, 2025, federal grand jury unsealed. Grand jury indictment was unsealed in the Southern District of New York, charging him under RICO. Okay, I remember that. Then on January 5th, 2026, he was named as co-defendant in this case that we're reading about. As of January 2026, Hector Rusthenford Guerrero Flores remains at large, with his current whereabouts unknown. U.S. international authorities continue efforts to locate and apprehend him. Dude, oh man, what if among the things we seized, the evidence we seized from Maduro is information on this guy's whereabouts? I bet after that raid, he and so many others are on the move, trying to wonder what the U.S. could use from Maduro's property to find them. Find him. Oh man. Okay, so that might be another kick-ass special forces operation we see in the future, is one to get this guy. All right. First charge, the narco-terrorist organization's working partnership with defendants. The FARC, since its founding in 1964, has become one of the largest producers of cocaine in the world. The FARC has generated significant, I've always heard them called FARC, but it sounds weird to say FARC. Anyway, the FARC has generated significant revenue through its cocaine trafficking, which is used to fund its operations, including, for example, large-scale weapons purchases and terrorist attacks. The FARC has also directed violence against the United States persons and property in foreign jurisdictions, including but not limited to Colombia. For example, from at least in or about 2003 to in or about 2008, FARC leadership ordered FARC members to kidnap and murder United States citizens and to attack United States interests in order to dissuade the United States from continuing its efforts to fumigate and disrupt the FARC's manufacturing and distribution of cocaine and cocaine paste. Consistent with these activities, in or about 1997, the U.S. Department of State designated the FARC as a foreign terrorist organization, pursuant to Section 219 of the Immigration and Nationality Act. On November 30th, 2021, the State Department removed FARC from the foreign terrorist organization list and simultaneously designated two FARC successor organizations pursuant to that same statute, the FARC-EP and the Segunda Marquitalia, both of which remain so designated as of the filing of this superseding indictment. The ELN has operated as a Colombian terrorist group since 1965. They're dedicated to the violent overthrow of the democratically elected government of Colombia. In furtherance of its anti-government agenda, the ELN has committed kidnappings, bombings, and other violent attacks targeting civilians and Colombian law enforcement. In addition, the ELN exports tons of cocaine annually to the US and elsewhere in order to finance its terrorist activities, and has at various times partnered with other Colombian guerrilla groups in pursuit of its cocaine trafficking and violent agenda. Consistent with these activities, in or about 1997, the State Department also designated ELN as a foreign terrorist organization group, and they remain so. The Sinaloa cartel, based in Mexican state of Sinaloa, has its roots in the late 1980s when the so-called Mexican Federation functioned as a council with representatives from the respective drug trafficking organizations of its principal leaders. During the late 1980s and 1990s, the members of the Mexican Federation partnered with Colombian sources of supply to transport drugs through Mexico and into the United States. In the early 2000s, Joaquin Archivaldo Guzman Loera, aka El Chapo, and Ismael Zambada Garcia, El Mayo, formed a partnership that led to the transformation of the Mexican Federation into the Sinaloa cartel. We have both of those guys. in custody now, which became the largest drug trafficking organization in the world. At present, the Sinaloa cartel is highly organized and active in more than in half of all states in Mexico. Through a sophisticated and heavily armed security apparatus, the Sinaloa cartel wields power through fear, threats, and violence, including by killing police, civilians, and members of other criminal groups who encroach on their territory without authorization. Members of the Sinaloa cartel may also be killed for perceived disloyalty, disobedience, or to send a message. To further and to protect its drug interest, the Sinaloa cartel engages in other criminal activity, including bribery, extortion, and weapons trafficking. As an additional means of revenue and profit, the Sinaloa cartel engages in migrant smuggling and human trafficking. Consistent with these activities, in or about February 2025, the State Department designated the Sinaloa cartel as a foreign terrorist organization. The Sinaloa cartel remains so designated. The Zetas, later known as Cartel del Noreste, CDN, is a violent and prolific transnational drug organization based in northeastern Mexico, involved in drug trafficking, kidnapping, extortion, human smuggling, and other illicit activities. The Zetas use violence to exert criminal control, including attacks against government officials in Mexico. Between in or about 2000 and in or about 2010, the Zetas formed an alliance with the Gulf Cartel, a group of drug traffickers primarily based in northern Mexico, whereby the Zetas served as the armed militaristic wing of the Gulf Cartel to maintain control of drug trafficking routes through Mexico. The Zetas recruited members of the Mexican Special Forces, along with drug traffickers who never served in the military or with a police force, to join the organization. In or about summer of 2010, the Zetas and Gulf Cartel's alliance fractured after a period of intense violence between the organizations. At that time, the Zetas operated as an independent drug trafficking organization that imported ton quantities of cocaine into the U.S. Consistent with these activities, in or about February 2025, State Department designated CDN, formerly known as Zetas, as a foreign terrorist organization, and they remain so as of this filing. Tren de Aragua, TDA, is a violent transnational criminal organization that originated as a prison gang in Venezuela. TDA has expanded its criminal network throughout the Western Hemisphere and established a presence in the United States, including New York. Tren de Aragua's criminal activities include human smuggling and other illicit acts. TDA has developed additional revenue sources through a range of other criminal activities, including drug trafficking, firearms trafficking, commercial sex trafficking, kidnapping, robbery, theft, fraud, and extortion. TDA members also commit murder, assault, and other acts of violence to enforce and further the organization's criminal activities. TDA has formed ties with other criminal groups operating in the Western Hemisphere and, at times, is willing to collaborate with other criminal organizations and groups on a local and ad hoc basis. Consistent with these activities, in or about February 2025, the State Department designated TDA as a foreign terrorist organization, and it remains so designated. The defendants corrupt drug trafficking and connections to narco-terrorist groups. Nicolás Maduro Moros, the defendant, like former President Chavez before him, participates in and perpetuates and protects a culture of corruption in which powerful Venezuelan elites enrich themselves through drug trafficking and the protection of their partner drug traffickers. The profits of that illegal activity flow to corrupt rank-and-file civilian, military, and intelligence officials who operate in a patronage system run by those at the top, referred to as the Cartel de los Soles, or Cartel of the Suns, a reference to the sun insignia affixed to the uniforms on high-ranking Venezuelan military officials. Venezuela sits in a geographically valuable location for drug traffickers, with northern access to the Caribbean Sea via several large ports and western access to the mountainous regions of Colombia, where coca is grown and turned into the vast majority of the world's cocaine supply in jungle laboratories. Starting in or about 1999, Venezuela became a safe haven for drug traffickers willing to pay for protection and support corrupt Venezuelan civilian and military officials who operated outside the reach of Colombian law enforcement and armed forces, bolstered by United States anti-narcotics assistance. In that environment, cocaine trafficking flourished. Venezuelan officials and their family members, including Nicolás Maduro Moros, Diosdado Cabello Rondon, Ramon Rodriguez Chacin, Cilia Adela Flores de Maduro, and Nicolas Ernesto Maduro Guerrero, aka Nicolasito, aka the Prince. All of these are the defendants in this case. They partnered with narcotics traffickers and narco-terrorist groups. By the way, there's someone that is left off here because the guy this case is named after um, has already pled guilty. The chicken, El Pollo, right? He's already pled guilty. So he's left off of this list because he's already been processed as part of this case. So I wouldn't be surprised if this is like, if there's a new case brought, a new docket opened, right? With the same indictment and all of that. But for now, this is on this United States v. Carvajal-Barrios docket. Okay. These defendants dispatched processed cocaine from Venezuela to the United States via transshipment points in the Caribbean and Central America, such as Honduras, Guatemala, and Mexico. By in or about 2020, the State Department estimated that between 200 and 250 tons of cocaine were trafficked through Venezuela annually. The maritime shipments were shipped north from Venezuela's coastline using go-fast vessels, fishing boats, and container ships. Air shipments were often dispatched from clandestine airstrips, typically made of dirt or grass, and also from commercial airports under the control of corrupt government and military officials. Through this drug trafficking, Nicolás Maduro Moros, the defendant, and corrupt members of his regime enabled corruption fueled by drug trafficking throughout the region. The transshipment points in Honduras, Guatemala, and Mexico similarly relied on a culture of corruption in which cocaine traffickers operating in those countries paid a portion of their own profits to politicians who protect and aided them. In turn, these politicians used the cocaine-fueled payments to maintain and augment their political power. So too were politicians along the Caribbean route, corrupted by cocaine traffickers who would pay them for protection from arrest and to allow favored traffickers to operate with impunity as they trafficked cocaine from Venezuela north towards the United States. Thus, at every step, relying on the producers in Colombia, transporters and distributors in Venezuela, and recipients and redistributors on transshipment points north, the traffickers enriched themselves and their corrupt benefactors who protected and aided them. Similarly, Nicolás Maduro Moros, Diosdado, Cabello, Rondon, and Ramon Rodriguez Chacin, the defendants and other corrupt members of the regime, facilitated the empowerment and growth of violent narco-terrorist groups, fueling their organizations with cocaine profits. Here we're getting to count one. These narco-terrorist groups not only worked directly with and sent profits to high-ranking Venezuelan officials, but also reaped the benefits of the increased value of that cocaine at each transshipment point along the way to the United States, where demand and thus the price of cocaine is highest. Those organizations include the FARC and ELN, which control cocaine production in the mountainous regions of Colombia, the Sinaloa Cartel and Zetas, which control routes in Central America, and the methods of crossing cocaine from Mexico into the United States, and TDA, Tren de Aragua, which controls a criminal network able to assist with the transportation of cocaine within Venezuela and on the Venezuelan coast. Overt acts in furtherance of the defendant's drug trafficking and narco-terrorism conspiracies. The defendants, together and with others, engaged in a relentless campaign of cocaine trafficking throughout the time period charged in this superseding indictment, resulting in the distribution of thousands of tons of cocaine in the United States. Throughout, Nicolás Maduro Moros, the defendant, along with members of his family and other corrupt officials, provided law enforcement cover and logistical support for the transport of cocaine through Venezuela, with knowledge that their drug trafficking partners would move the cocaine north to the United States. While this conduct occurred regularly and repeatedly through the time period charged below are certain examples of acts engaged in by the defendants in furtherance of their drug trafficking, including in partnership with narco-terrorist groups. Between approximately 2006 and 2008, while acting as Venezuela's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Maduro Moros sold Venezuelan diplomatic passports to individuals that he knew were drug traffickers in order to assist traffickers seeking to move drug proceeds from Mexico to Venezuela under diplomatic cover. When the drug traffickers needed to move drug proceeds from Mexico back to Venezuela, Maduro Moros facilitated the movement of private planes under diplomatic cover to ensure the flights received no scrutiny from law enforcement or the military. On these occasions, Maduro Moros called the Venezuelan embassy in Mexico to advise that a diplomatic mission would be arriving by private plane. Then, while the traffickers met with the Venezuelan ambassador to Mexico under the auspices of diplomatic mission from Maduro Moros, their plane was loaded with the drug proceeds. The plane would then return to Venezuela under diplomatic cover. In approximately 2007, Cilia Adela Flores de Moro, the wife of Nicolás Maduro, attended a meeting in which she accepted hundreds of thousands of dollars in bribes to broker a meeting between a large-scale drug trafficker and the director of Venezuela's National Anti-Drug Office, Ernesto Torres. The drug trafficker later arranged to pay a monthly bribe to Reveral Torres, in addition to approximately $100,000 for each flight that was transporting cocaine to ensure the flight's safe passage, a portion of which was then paid to Flores, Cilia. In or about 2015, Reveral Torres was charged with narcotics offenses in the Eastern District of New York, and he is still a fugitive. Between in or about 2003 and in or about 2011, while Diosdado Cabello Rondon, the defendant, occupied various official positions in Venezuela, the Zetas worked with a group of Colombian drug traffickers to dispatch cargo containers on container ships carrying 5 to 6 tons of cocaine each, and sometimes as much as 20 tons each, from ports in Venezuela to ports in Mexico, and ultimately to the United States. The tens of thousands of kilograms of cocaine sent by this group were protected in Venezuela by Venezuelan military officials referred to as the generals. Between in or about 2004 and in or about 2015, Maduro Moros and Flores de Maduro. Maduro Moros and Flores de Maduro worked together to traffic cocaine, much of which had been previously seized by Venezuelan law enforcement with the assistance of armed military escorts. During this time, Nicolas and Cilia maintained their own groups of state-sponsored gangs known as collectivos to facilitate and protect their drug trafficking operations, so collectives. Maduro Moros and Flores de Maduro also ordered kidnappings, beatings, and murders against those who owed them drug money or otherwise undermined their drug trafficking operation, including ordering the murder of local drug bosses in Caracas, Venezuela. In or about 2006, Venezuelan officials dispatched more than 5.5 tons of cocaine from Venezuela to Mexico on a DC-9 jet. Cabello Rondon, then director of Venezuela's military intelligence, Hugo Armando Carvajal-Barrios, aka El Pollo, the chicken. He makes an appearance. The chicken, this guy right down there, the chicken. He is future star witness in this case. Bet on it. Bet on it. I mean, think about how many. Think about the power that's at issue here and the money, that the billions of dollars that are at issue here, and the violent power and influence that all of these organizations have in Central America, in this hemisphere. They, Trinidad Aragua, the Zetas, ELN, guys, all of these groups are right now, one, scattering, trying to figure out how to protect themselves from whatever fallout may come from Maduro being removed. Two, trying to figure out how they can consolidate any power, gain more power for themselves, and protect their operations. Three, they're trying to figure out how they can kill this guy, kill Maduro, kill Cilia. They are trying to figure out how they can prevent this case from exposing them more. This is Man, this is huge. So Pollo pled guilty in June 2025 in the SDNY to narco-terrorism, narcotics, and weapons offenses that were based on the first superseding indictment in this case. And Venezuelan National Guard Captain Basile Cotasque Villarroel Ramirez. Right there. Right down there on the bottom right. Actually, my picture is blocking it. Right down there, if you want to take a look. Right here. Worked with other members of the Venezuelan regime to coordinate the shipment. The more than 5.5 tons of cocaine were transported in approximately 5 vans to the hangar reserved for the Venezuelan president at Simón Bolívar International Airport in Maiquetía, Venezuela. At the Maiquetía airport, members of the Venezuelan National Guard loaded the cocaine onto the plane, which took off using a flight plan that Villarroel Ramirez approved in exchange for bribes. Despite the payment of those bribes, when the plane landed at Ciudad del Carmen Airport in Campeche, Mexico, Mexican authorities seized more than 5.5 tons of cocaine. Shortly after the seizure, Villarroel Ramirez told the Venezuelan drug traffickers who worked with him that they needed to pay Cabello Rondon a bribe to ensure that those who had assisted them at the Maiquetía airport would not be arrested. Villarroel Ramirez then arranged a meeting with Cabello Rondon, after which the traffickers paid approximately $2.5 million to Cabello Rondon through his family member. In or about 2013, Villarroel Ramirez was charged with narcotics offenses in the Eastern District of New York and is a fugitive. Between approximately 2006 and 2008, Hector Rusthenford Guerrero Flores, aka Niño Guerrero, the defendant, worked with one of the largest drug traffickers in Venezuela, Walid Makled. The members of the Venezuelan regime helped protect Makled's cocaine shipments that were transported from the San Fernando de Apure, Venezuela, to Valencia, Venezuela, and were then sent by plane from the Valencia International Airport to Mexico and other locations in Central America for eventual distribution to the United States. Between and or about 2008 and 2009, Guerrero Flores also provided another major Venezuelan drug trafficker with protection for cocaine shipments moving through Venezuela, including by providing armed men who carried various weapons, AK-47s, MP5s, AR-15s, as well as grenades. At times, Guerrero Flores personally accompanied large cocaine loads as they were guarded by the teams of armed men en route to airports or airstrips for transport north and eventual distribution to the United States. Guerrero Flores was paid a fee per kilogram of cocaine transported or received, and he sometimes received an interest in portions of those massive cocaine shipments in lieu of payment. The traffickers that Guerrero Flores worked with moved thousands of kilos per shipment, multiple times per month, resulting in the distribution of hundreds of tons of cocaine to the U.S. In or about 2009, Makled was charged with narcotics offenses in the SDNY and is a fugitive. In or about 2008, Ramon Rodriguez Chacin, the defendant, maintained a large estate in Barinas State, Venezuela, which contained a large FARC encampment and training school with approximately 200 armed FARC members carrying automatic rifles at any given time. During this time, Rodriguez Chacin accepted tens of thousands of dollars in bribes to use his corrupt influence to shield a large-scale drug trafficker from arrest and extradition. During subsequent meetings with drug trafficker between in or about 2008 and 2010, Rodriguez Chacin discussed trafficking multi-ton quantities of cocaine with other Venezuelan officials, including Carvajal-Barrios. In or about 2011, the Sinaloa cartel's then leader, Joaquin Archibaldo Guzman Loretta, aka El Chapo, financed cocaine laboratories in Colombia. Cocaine produced in those laboratories was then transported under the protection of FARC into Venezuela and received protection en route to an airstrip from Carvajal-Barrios, a close ally of Maduro Moros and Cabello Rondon, the chicken. In or about September 2013, mere months after Maduro Moros succeeded to the Venezuelan presidency, Venezuelan officials dispatched approximately 1.3 tons of cocaine on a commercial flight from Makatia Airport to Paris Charles de Gaulle Airport. French authorities seized that cocaine. Following the seizure, Maduro Moros convened a meeting with, among others, Cabello Rondon and Carvajal-Barrios. During the meeting, Maduro Moros and Cabello Rondon and Carvajal-Barrios that they should not, Maduro told those two individuals, Cabello Rondon and Carvajal-Barrios, that they should not have used the Makatia airport for drug trafficking after the 2006 seizure in Mexico, and they should instead use other well-established drug routes and locations to dispatch cocaine. Shortly thereafter, Maduro Moros and others authorized the arrest of certain Venezuelan military officials in an effort to divert public and law enforcement scrutiny away from Maduro, Cabello Rondon and Carvajal-Barrios' participation in the shipment. So let me just highlight this. It's what's happening here is the indictment is giving you examples of how these things work: the bribery, the fees for trafficking, the routes they took, the various airports they went to, the means of transporting this cocaine, right? And it's giving you examples of some of the seizures that have occurred. They've selected these because they have the evidence to prove it. They know, they are aware of many, 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 many more instances just like these. But they've selected, for the purpose of the indictment and the charges they're bringing against Maduro, these specific instances because they have evidence that can directly tie the defendants in this case to what they are describing here. So where it says that Maduro told these two individuals that they shouldn't have used that airport and they should use a different airport and they should do so because of the seizure in 2006 in Mexico, you've been found out, you need to use this other airport, they can prove that. They have evidence that will show whether it's a phone call that was recorded or a documentation, or it's going to be based on Carvajal-Barrios' own testimony, which is why you see his name here. I think it's because he's going to be the star witness in this case, as I said earlier. They're giving examples of these are the instances of criminal acts that we can prove that give evidence of a narco-terrorism conspiracy, a drug trafficking conspiracy. And here's where people were killed, and here's where people were arrested by Venezuela's own people in order to distract from what was going on, in order to protect the organization's operations. That's what's going on in this indictment. They're not picking these things just randomly. There's a reason behind each one. And so as you hear each one of these examples, you can trust that we're going to see evidence of these that tie all this together as the case go forward and give evidence to Maduro and the other defendants' participation in these specific instances. Between approximately 2014 and 2015, a captain in the Venezuelan National Guard at Margarita Island, Venezuela, coordinated hotels, transportation, women, and food for visits by Venezuelan officials, including Nicolás Ernesto Maduro Guerrero, who visited Margarita Island approximately twice monthly. Ooh. This sounds like a good place for U.S. intelligence to set an operation up. This sounds like the perfect place to gather intel on these people. Okay, Maduro Guerrero would arrive on a Falcon 900 plane owned by Venezuela's state oil company, PDVSA, before leaving the island. Maduro Guerrero's PDVSA plane would be loaded, sometimes with the assistance of armed sergeants, with large packages wrapped in tape that the captain understood were drugs. Maduro Guerrero was present while the PDVSA plane was loaded and on one occasion stated that the plane could go wherever it wanted, including the United States. Between in or about October 2015 and in or about November 2015, Efraín Campo Flores and Frankie Francisco Flores de Freitas, two relatives of Maduro Moros and Flores de Maduro, their nephews, agreed during recorded meetings with DEA and confidential sources to dispatch multi-hundred kilogram cocaine shipments from Maduro Moros' presidential hangar at the Macatilla airport. During recorded meetings with the sources, Campo Flores and Flores de Freitas explained that they were at war with the United States and described the Cartel de los Soles, discussed a connection to a commander for the FARC who was supposedly high ranked, and indicated that they were seeking to raise $20 million in drug proceeds to support a campaign by Flores de Maduro in connection with the late 2015 election for the Venezuelan National Assembly. Campo Flores referred to Maduro Moros as his father and stated that what we want is for him to take control again of the National Assembly. In or about November 2016, Campo Flores and Flores de Freitas were convicted at trial in this district for conspiring to import cocaine into the United States. And I covered some of that in my previous videos. In or about 2017, Maduro Guerra worked to ship hundreds of kilograms of cocaine from Venezuela to Miami. During this time, Maduro Guerra spoke with his drug trafficking partners about, among other things, shipping low-quality cocaine to New York because it could not be sold in Miami, arranging a 500 kilogram shipment of cocaine to be unloaded from a cargo container near Miami, and using scrap metal containers to smuggle cocaine into the ports of New York. In or about 2018 and 2019, Rodriguez Chacin made multiple trips from Barinas State to Caracas with a key FARC leader for meetings with Maduro Moros. These trips were part of a long history of Rodriguez Chacin's regular meetings with the FARC and ELN members in both their jungle encampments and Barinas, because Rodriguez Chacin was assigned by Maduro Moros to provide the FARC and ELN with protection and support. Rodriguez Chacin also brought FARC leaders to meet Maduro Moros at Miraflores, the presidential palace in Caracas, as well as Fuerte Tiuna, which is the bunker where we arrested Maduro, that Delta raided, the chief military complex in Caracas and headquarters of Venezuela's Ministry of Defense. In or about July 2019, shortly after certain FARC leaders had publicly returned to arms despite the signing of recent peace accords with the Colombian government, Maduro Moros and Cabello Rondon attended a videotaped press conference at which Maduro Moros announced that the FARC and its leaders were welcome in Venezuela. In or about 2019, Tren de Araga's leader, Guerrero Flores, discussed drug trafficking with an individual he understood to be working with the Venezuelan regime. That's the kind of description that tells you he might have been a double agent. Over multiple calls, Guerrero Flores offered to provide escort services for drug loads, explaining that Guerrero Flores and TDA had control of the coastlines of Venezuela's Aragua state. Guerrero Flores, speaking from TDA's base of operations in Tocoron prison, explained that TDA could handle the logistics of every aspect of the drug trade, including the use of storage compartments that Guerrero Flores called cradles, located on a beach in Aragua state. In doing so, Guerrero Flores confirmed TDA's ability to protect over 1 ton of cocaine. Of course, they can protect much more than that, but it doesn't matter as far as this indictment goes. In about 2020, Maduro Guerra attended a meeting in Medellin, Colombia, with 2 representatives of the FARC. During the meeting, Maduro Guerra discussed arrangements to move large quantities of cocaine and weapons through Colombia and into the United States over the course of the next 6 years, until in or about 2026. Maduro Guerra also discussed paying the FARC with weapons in connection with the cocaine loads. In or about 2007, at the direction of Carvajal-Barrios, Venezuelan General Cliver Alcala Cordonez delivered to FARC leadership 4 crates of weapons from the Venezuelan government, which included 20 grenades and 2 grenade launchers. In or about June 2023, Alcala Cordonez pleaded guilty in this district to conspiring to provide material support to the FARC as a foreign terrorist who is a FTO, foreign terrorist organization, pursuant to a 3rd superseding indictment in this case. So that's someone else we could see as a star witness in this case. Also, that's why there's the count in this case of drug shipments and um, machine guns, conspiracy to transport machine guns, possession. These right here, charges counts 3 and 4. It kind of seems like small things maybe, but it just further goes to the fact that this is a violent gang, and Maduro and these defendants are integral and complicit in the equipping of these violent cartels. Between in or about 2022 and in or about 2024, Cabello Rondon regularly traveled to clandestine airstrips controlled by the ELN near the Colombia-Venezuela border to ensure the cocaine's continued safe passage in Venezuelan territory. From these airstrips, cocaine was dispatched out of Venezuela both on flights approved by the Venezuelan military officials and on clandestine flights designed to avoid detection by law enforcement or militaries in South and Central America. In or about the end of 2024, Cabello Rondon received narcotics proceeds from cocaine trafficking, and in or about 2025, Colombian drug traffickers discussed with an associate of Cabello Rondon plans for continued cocaine trafficking through Venezuela. So that's the end of the overt acts section. The next part are the statutory allegations. So count 1, narco-terrorism conspiracy, and it's saying like everything that was described in paragraphs 1 through 21 of this superseding indictment show that from 1999 to 2025, Nicolás Maduro Moros, Diosdado, Cabello Rondon, and Ramon Rodriguez Chacin committed overt acts in furtherance of a narco-terrorism conspiracy. And then it mentions which foreign terrorist organizations they were involved with, which are all the ones named here: FARC and their various components, Segunda Marketalia, ELN, Tren de Aragua, Sinaloa Cartel, CDN, Zetas, all of them. Count 2, cocaine importation conspiracy. That's also described in paragraphs 1 through 21, of course. Those same defendants I mentioned before, plus his Maduro's wife, Cilia Adela Flores de Maduro, and Nicolas Ernesto de Maduro Guerrero, and Hector Rusthenford Guerrero Flores. So that's what's all described in those paragraphs we just read. And then count 3, conspiracy or possession of machine guns. Then count 4 is going to be conspiracy to do the same. That was described particularly in this last part where it was described shipment of arms to specific members, Trinidad Wagwa, to enable them and help them in protecting these shipments of cocaine. So that's what this that's what this indictment says. And I think the most, like, they, as I said earlier, they could describe so many thousands of instances of these people engaging in criminal activity and activity in support of foreign terrorist organizations and crime syndicates that do harm directly and indirectly to United States citizens and United States itself, and to United States interest and to our allies. The prosecutors have selected the ones for which they know absolutely certain, they believe very strongly, I should say, that they have the evidence to convict them on these charges. And I guarantee they're going to use the testimony of those 2 people who have already pleaded guilty. And then they're also, I would be shocked if Delta Force did not take with them various electronic devices and other documentation from the palace. Maybe, I don't know if they actually went there or not, and but from the bunker. I think that they were probably able to get a lot of evidence, but wisely, they're not going to advertise that they did. And then next we have forfeiture allegations, which is, everything you own is going to be forfeited to the U.S. Because basically everything you own is in all of your bank accounts and all of those things. It was all purchased, or it's all had, the numbers in it are all based on criminal activity. Okay. Last thing I want to cover about this. That's the indictment. He was arraigned. He pled not guilty. And then you probably saw that he said that he was a good man. And you've probably seen him act kind of like, oops, he's kind of been smiling in some images that have gone around, and he's kind of like smiling for the press. I'm not surprised to see that. Some people have been surprised to see that. Like they thought that he would be looking down or kind of like pulling a, like beaten up, like, not like literally beaten up, but like downtrodden, depressed, and all these things. I didn't actually expect that really. I expected him to, he's a politician. He's going to play to the cameras. He's going to try and appear like he's unfazed by this. He's the one who's a victim here. That's the angle he's going to work. And I'm not really surprised by that. There were also some images, or, they have the courtroom drawing of his wife, and she looked to have bandages on her head. So I don't know if those were already there or if she was injured while they were apprehending her. That might come up. You might see that complained about. Not that it's going to make a bit of difference, but she's someone else, or that's just another thing about her that was picked up on. Lastly, I want to tell you about his attorney. The attorney for Maduro is Barry Joel Pollock, or at least that's the guy who's his attorney right now. Maybe that'll change. And if you don't know that name, that's okay. He's a white collar crime criminal defendant, criminal defense attorney, defends some high profile people. And where you are probably most familiar with his work from is that he also represented Julian Assange. He signed on as Julian Assange's defense attorney in January, almost exactly 3 years ago, January 3rd, 2023. Then, of course, later Assange somehow was able to get a plea deal, which I'm still unhappy about. So another fun fact about this whole thing going on in this case, and there's so many interesting and fun facts. There's so much intrigue here. Maduro's defense counsel is Barry J. Pollock, and this is not the first Russian asset that Pollock has represented. He also represented Julian Assange, another infamous Russian asset. But that's a discussion for another day. I'm sure some people just raise their eyebrow at me. If you don't know that Julian Assange is a Russian asset, well, I suggest you go back and rethink your assessment of Julian Assange and who he was, what he's all about. Okay, so that's my coverage of the indictment, and I'm adding this to the list of what I call just cases. As you know, I'm just human, and these are my just cases. And I'm going to be tracking this case and tracking what goes on with Maduro. I think this has the potential to be one of the most significant cases in the history of cases. I am so excited for this. I said it before, this is more significant. This is more impactful than any arrest of any Democrat politician or any domestic villain in the US that you or maybe some other people have been whining about. Why hasn't Pam Bondi arrested this particular person or that particular person? Well, maybe she was doing much bigger things. Like this, guys. It could hardly be more important than getting this guy right up here. You see people complain, why hasn't Pam Bondi arrested whoever it is that they particularly dislike? Well, it's because we've been working, it's because the Trump admin has been working on getting this one. A guy who's on a tier far, far, far above just about everybody else that they could possibly have brought a case against. I'm getting excited about it all over again. All right. Thank you very much for listening to this video, and I'll make a playlist on Rumble and YouTube for this and continue my coverage of this case and others. If you're interested in this type of stuff, keep following me. Make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell. Sign up to my Substack, justhuman.substack.com. All right. You'll see me in the next video. And until then, stay human.